can sometimes feel like a lot, but you don't have to do it alone. I strongly believe that we're stronger together. Here, we're going to slow down, have real talks, make sense of things together, and explore ways to intentionally grow the life you want. We're going to talk about mental and physical health, relationships, money, work, and community. Welcome to Rooted in Intention with me, Karina Gomez. Hi, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to another episode. So excited that you're here. Today, we're going to be talking about money. And I'm joined with a special guest, Lucy King, who is the founder of Say Hola Wealth. She is a mentor, a keynote speaker, and financial educator that's helping Latinas break cycles and build generational wealth. So, Lucy, thank you so much for joining me. And I love hearing people's stories. So, can you share a little bit about how you became a financial expert?
Yes, absolutely. First of all, thank you so much for having me today, Karina, and congratulations on your podcast. I wish you so much success. And also, I just love when we come together as community to share the story. So I have a very long story, but I'm gonna make it short for your audience. So I am the youngest of five. I was raised by a single mother. And I grew up low income. So for me, a way of just getting out of poverty was always thinking about the importance of education. But because we were pretty much living paycheck to paycheck, and we never had financial stability or housing stability, we moved so much. So I was doing what is now very famous as like online school. I was doing that back in the day when I was like taking tests and mailing the exams and getting the resources and all of that. And so for me, education became one of the many tools that I wanted to use for upward mobility. And so I dropped out of school when I was 14 years old to help my mom financially, not because she asked me to, but because I
Mhm.
saw the financial stress that she was going through, and she was working three jobs.
Wow.
And so I told myself, you got to do something. Like if there's no food, if there's no electricity, if there's no floor, because there were some times when we live in houses that had no floor and sometimes not even like a techo. And so
Mm.
I decided that I wanted to help my family. And I got my first job at 14, which meant that I needed to drop out of school. And I went and applied for a job at a place that could hire me at that time. And I remember one of my supervisors said that I was a smart person. And I never considered myself to be someone that was smart. I think I will always consider myself to be someone that was very resourceful.
Mm.
And he saw something in me and he started essentially saying, you've already mastered the job that you do, and you're already learning like the 25 other positions of the people working
Mm.
in this assembly line. So have you ever thought about going to school? And I remember telling him, well, yeah, I've always loved school and I've always loved books and I've always loved learning, but I can't afford that right now." And I remember him telling me, well, if you don't go back to school, I'm going to have to fire you. And so I'm always so grateful for that person because he believed in me. He had no business believing in me. And he said, go find your education or you're going to be fired. And so because of that, I decided to enroll in after school program, continued to work for this company for a couple of years. And then eventually, I think I realized that it was time for me to go when I started seeing everybody just getting complacent with, yeah, let's just earn this money and be happy and be comfortable. But I knew that I always wanted to go to school. And so I was able to do that eventually and graduated with my bachelor's degree. But during the whole time of my school careers, I was always working in the mornings, going to school at 9, or asking my supervisors to essentially change my shifts so I can go do the opposite, right? And then in 2019, I was at the top of my professional career where I was a general manager in the hospitality industry. I was leading a team, I was making money. I had been in an executive position for about 8 years now. And I was living what most people will think is the American dream. And when I was at the top, I realized that I was underpaid by $40,000
Wow.
doing the same job as another white man. And I start to raise my voice and say, hey, how come I'm underpaid when I'm making literally the same job as this other person? And because at that point, I also had access to salary bands for other employees, I also noticed a lot of discrepancies in payroll for Latinas specifically, and I raised my voice again. And so I was always told, well, just be happy that you have a job. And
Mm.
I essentially kept quiet because I was afraid to lose my job. I was still helping my family financially. And when I became pregnant with my daughter, who is now 7 years old, I was labeled a problem by my immediate boss at that time. And that phrase of, oh, whoa, now you're a problem because you're pregnant,
Mm.
like that just woke my money trauma that I had been carrying for so long. And I couldn't physically continue to be in that job. And so I left with $2,000 in a regular checking account. I didn't have any knowledge of money. I didn't know how money works. Even though I was helping a company make a lot of money, I didn't have any idea on how personal finances work. Business finances, yes, I was pretty savvy on it. But personal finance was something that I never learned. I never saw at home. And so here I was now with a baby, a new marriage, a brand new house, and $2,000 in a bank account. And so that's when it all started. I decided that it was time to really do something that was going to help me break generational cycles once and for all.
Yeah, I think that's such an important thing that you pointed out is sometimes knowing how to do money within businesses and what we do for companies oftentimes as employees and how that can be so different of dealing with money in our personal lives. Can you share a little bit more of what were some of those stories that were coming up for you that you really had to disentangle and unlearn? And what were some of those new stories and beliefs that you came to live and really own?
Yeah, 100%. So the first one that I can think of is the belief that education was going to make me wealthy. I have to completely unlearn that. And education gave me upward mobility, but education alone doesn't build wealth. And I had to learn this the hard way because after I left my corporate career, I told myself, well, I need to go back to earn my master's because somehow I need to have an excuse for when I return to the workforce, and I need to have these, oh yeah, that gap on my resume is because I was earning my MBA.
Mhm.
And so I've learned that education is going to, yes, give you the ability to earn more money and potentially even manage a team if that's something that you want. But if you don't know what is the rooted cause of why you continue to believe that hard work is the only way, you're
Mhm.
always going to go after the next degree, the next diploma, the next certification. And I see this so much right now with entrepreneurs that they spend more time acquiring certifications versus creating a sales plan. And I was there too, by the way. The other thing for me was that because I had so many childhood wounds from abandonment from my dad, because my parents separated when I was born, I've always wanted to feel validated by other people. And that
Mhm.
turned into me having compulsive overspending, you know, always wanting to look good so people can tell me like, oh, ay, qué bonita, or how
Mhm.
I like your shirt, I like your zapatos, I like all of these things. And so for me, that really always had me like I have to have the latest trend, I have to look good, I have to even look a little bit expensive because when I was in my corporate career, I was very young, so I had to look wealthy and I had to look older. I've never like had my hair down. I always had my hair up in a little bun because I wanted to be respected, right? And so when I was going through my unlearning of my money trauma, I realized that a lot of those patterns were very toxic and they were also keeping me from building wealth. And another one was because I knew that I had money avoidance, and eventually I was able to name it because I didn't know there was such a thing. I remember even creating 1,000 excuses simply to avoid looking at my money. So I knew that I had a money date. And I thought, okay, I'm gonna create this plan. And then I started thinking, oh my God, I need to rearrange the furniture. Oh my God, that's those paintings. Oh my God, I need to clean the drawer, the messy drawer that we'll have a house. So I started to notice that I was really avoiding of that. And so once I was able to create the awareness, then I said, okay, what are the things that I need to do so I can stop, right? Avoidance, maybe I need to leave the house and go to a coffee shop and just sit there and look at my finances. Maybe I don't need to fully develop a 30-day plan, but maybe it's just about opening the bank account. And
Mhm.
so awareness created the habits that now help me become work optional at 45.
That's so interesting as I hear you say that because one, it's so important to be aware of what our own issues are. And it kind of gets me thinking of just my own personal journey with money because I was a little bit on the opposite of you, but they were still causing some, I guess, like issues to an extent. So I actually looked at my money so much when I was younger because I was like, I want to make sure I have enough. And I had a lot of fear around not being able to pay for some kind of emergency that comes up. And I didn't like that feeling. So I was like, I'm going to be putting my money into my savings. And it ended up working out for me because it ended up creating a cushion. But looking back, I just had so much anxiety around like, am I putting enough money away? And just like, oh, don't spend on all of these things that are like useless and that type of thing. And really, I think one of the powerful things that we also don't talk about is yes, we could save, but then there's also that important piece of earning more money that I think we don't talk about enough. And I'm curious if that came up for you at all throughout your journey.
Yeah, so your journey is also very common, by the way. You're what I call a super saver, which is people that are always vigilant with their finances and always being prepared for who knows what, right? And that's based on our live experiences. I think that maybe you went through growing up where your parents didn't have money and you feel like you should have helped them, right? And so that's why we save and create these big pile of money that it's good, but also once the pile grows so big, that's when we start investing. And so to answer your question for me, when it came to earning, since I've started earning money at 14 years old, I was always told that that was enough. Whether it was by a supervisor when they hired me to clean rooms when I
Mhm.
was 16 years old, and they said, yeah, we're gonna pay you $7.20, and that's the max you can make. So while I was earning money, I've always heard there is a cap. You can only make 720.
Mhm.
When I started negotiating my salary as a professional, I was always told, well, you can only get 3%. And so for a very long time, I've always believed the narrative that there was a cap, that no matter how hard I was going to work, there was always someone at the top that will stop me. So then that created the people pleasing of, well, if I want to make it to the next promotion, I have to be friends with the boss and, all of these people in the club, the unspoken club rules in corporate, right? And we also have to be prepared. So that looks like maybe I have to say yes to everything that comes my way. Yes to being in a non-for-profit board. Yes to helping maybe interview for salaries or whatever it takes, right? And so I've always had a cap in my corporate career. But once I started to look into my business, I said, well, no one can tell me how much I can make. And I
Mhm.
remember when I hired my first business coach, they were talking about how they were making $10,000 months. And I thought, $10,000, that will take me 3 months in my corporate career to make that
Mhm.
much money. And so I've always also had these, oh, it's probably fake, it's probably not real. And then one day I said, well, what would it look like for you to not have an income cap?
Mhm.
What would it look like for you to not have an earning limit? And then I started to also ask myself some questions like, well, what is my relationship with earning? And what are the things that I heard growing up? What are the things that I heard my mom said to me. And a lot of those conversations went around safety and shame. Like, hey,
Mhm.
you have a 9 to 5. You don't have to work in something that is physically tiring. So you should be grateful for having a 401k. And so I realized that eventually my relationship with earning was also very toxic. And so I have to
Mhm.
just ask myself very hard questions on, why am I not negotiating a 15% increase? Why do I believe that I need to have more skills? Why do I believe that I need another certification?
Mhm.
And who do I want to be if I can just walk into the office right now and negotiate a $50,000 salary increase, right?
Mhm.
And so once I did that, I was able to create a multidimensional business, which is Say Hola Wealth, where I work part-time job, but I make full-time income, and I use technology and automation. And also, I say no to a lot of things just so I can increase my income potential, because that's what we believe also as Latinas, that if we say yes to 100 opportunities, we should make $100, versus if I say yes to 20% of the opportunities that come my way, I can still earn the 100% cap. And
Mhm.
so, yes, I went through a lot of unlearning, and I am still going through that right now, especially as I'm getting ready to publish my book. I have to make bigger investments that require me to also say, whoa, hold on. I'm paying how much to publish my book? And with that comes me trusting that I am heading the right way, but also not just manifesting that I'm going to have book sales, but strategically thinking about, okay, who do I need to talk? What kind of relationships do I need to nurture right now? So when the time comes, I am ready to bring this book to life.
Thank you for sharing that, Lucy. And I'm going to get back to your book because I want to talk a little bit more about that. But before then, I think this is one of the things that I've been thinking about recently, just like really pondering, is how a lot of our growth involves mindset and practical knowledge. And I think both of those are very important. And we've been talking quite a bit about like mindset and money beliefs. And I want to talk a little bit more about some practical knowledge from experience that you have from yourself and working with individuals. What do you think are some of those key elements that a lot of our community is oftentimes missing around money?
Yes, that's a great question. After coaching 241 women on this same principle, what I see is the biggest barrier is the lack of boundaries.
Mhm.
And that comes also with cultural expectations and familismo and all of these things that really shape our money mindset. Because we sometimes think, okay, money mindset is just about money, but it's also about relationships, it's also about expectations. And so the lack of boundaries will always keep you hostage, no
Mhm.
matter how much you make. You can make 20,000, you can make 180,000, but if you don't have a strong boundaries, you're always going to feel like there isn't enough or that you're always behind. A clear example that I can share with you is I have clients that tell me, well, I can't save because my family keeps coming to ask me money almost every time I get paid. And I said, well, one, why are you telling them when you get paid? And two, you have to get clear on your goals before you start saving anybody else. And again, that comes with like familismo and cultural expectations. And I see this over and over, right? If you, I like to use the analogy of someone drowning in a swimming pool. If your family member is drowning, what is the first thing that you're gonna do?
Save them.
You're gonna save them, right? And it's
Mhm.
very normal for us, like, oh, in order for me to save them, I'm gonna jump in the pool and try to get them out. And then you realize, oh my God, wait a minute, I don't even know how to swim.
Oh no.
Both of you will drown versus you standing outside of the pool and just guiding them with, hey, move your right arm and start doing this and kick your legs. But because we have been living in a scarcity mindset and survival throughout our whole life, for us that doesn't come normal, right? Because we hear it from our moms too, like, ayúdale a tu hermano, hey, go help your sister. Hey, don't do that. Hey, always be there. And that is something that holds a lot of women from building savings, from paying off debt, from negotiating their salaries because they're always think about other people. And it's hard. It's hard. I've been there
Hmm.
too, right? Where you say boundaries with your family. But if you don't do that, then you're always going to be upset about not being able to achieve the goals, the life that you want, because it is hard for you to say, I love you, but I cannot help you. And I do
Hmm.
my family too, where when I started my journey back in 2019, I had to set huge boundaries. And I have to remind you that I have a lot of abandonment wounds. So for me to say no and then being seen as, pues ya se cree mucho,
Hmm.
she's better than us, it was really hard. But I said, I want to break this generational money cycle of struggling and survival, and I have to be the brave one. So once I said that to myself, I had a conversation with them where I said, hey, I am growing a business. I am making money through my business, but here is my plan. My plan is to make work optional at 45. My plan is to save my first $10,000. My plan is to make sure that I have a healthy relationship with money so my daughters can follow that. And that means that if I was giving you $500 a month, now I'm only going to be able to give you $200 a month. I hope you're okay with it. And at first, it was seen as betrayal, right? Because
Hmm.
now she has money, now she has all of these. But now my family understands. And now my nieces, my nephews, my mom, my sisters, they're investors. And so
Hmm.
you have to be willing to be just so passionate about the life that you want so much that you make your own friends and family uncomfortable, and the right people will stay with you. And for me, my whole family has come with me. It took a little bit of learning and a lot of bit of, well, a lot of healing on my part, a little bit of healing on their part too. But now we have boundaries with each other, and not just
Hmm.
financial boundaries, but even when I ask my sister or my mom to help me with my daughters, I always say, I will give you 30 days in advance so you know that I need your help. And if I
Hmm.
ever ask you like 7 days before the event or whatever, whenever I need you, I want you to be okay telling me, hey, I can't help you. Or
Hmm.
I want you to tell me, hey, I will help you, but I also will charge you extra because it's a last minute request. Because if you think about it, Karina, we already do this with other services, right? Let me use the analogy of a cake or a bakery. You wouldn't walk into a place and say, hey, I want to order a cake that looks like this and tastes like this, and here's $40. They'll say, wait a minute, this is a rush order. I'm going to have to charge you a premium for the time. I'm going to charge you extra for the flavors and the specific type of cake that you want. And so that's what I see is the biggest barrier for us, the lack of boundaries. It's not
Hmm.
the lack of money or the lack of knowledge, but the lack of boundaries 100%.
And I imagine that as you were practicing boundaries more, it created space and it allowed others to also create those boundaries for themselves and learn, like, huh, maybe Lucy's onto something. And what are some ways that I could set boundaries for myself as well?
Yes, 100%. And I see it with my mom and my sister where they were always available for my brother or for my nieces and nephews. And now I said, don't answer the phone every time they call you. And they are implementing some of the steps and the things that I suggest. You know, they love to serve and they love to help. So for them, it has been a little bit harder, but they're getting there, right? And that I'm sharing that because that is also that I want to share with your audience the boundaries. It's not like A through C sprint to the finish line and you're gonna feel like amazing. Sometimes you are gonna set one boundary and feel horrible. And sometimes
Mhm.
you're gonna move 5 steps ahead and you're gonna be like, wow, I'm so happy with my decision. And life will happen. And sometimes maybe you have to go back 2 steps and that's okay. But the biggest boundary that we need to set is with ourselves. Like if you promise yourself that you were gonna save $10,000 or start investing in the stock market and you haven't done it,
Mhm.
that's a disservice directly to you and it's going to affect you and no one else.
Yeah. And I just want to, I guess, like summarize some important points that I'm hearing for you is one, the like very powerful questions that you started to ask yourself. I don't know if it came necessarily from the business coach that you were working with, or maybe this was just from your own healing journey. But I think there's so much power in asking us questions because you started asking, like, what would it look like to make money with no cap? And then the other thing that I heard you say is really creating clarity for yourself of where do you want to go? What are your money goals? Because I think that is then the anchor that helps guide you and it's your North Star to when you are setting boundaries. So you could go back and check in with yourself of like, hold on, I'm working towards this and this is very important to me. And I think that that almost helps guide you and like ground you in the actions that you're taking in the day to day.
100%. And I am the queen of automation. So if I tell myself that I'm gonna say invest $10,000 in one specific account, I make the time, which is 5 minutes, to just put the amount and automate it, right? So I don't have to think about it. And when a family member comes and says, can I borrow money? I can say, I don't have the money, which is true. I don't have the
Mhm.
money because the money is already automated and is going to be my promise to myself. And so I've always tell my clients and the people that I work with is like, automate. Automate.
Mhm.
Automation is the biggest boundary because you know that the money is going out, is you don't have the money. Even if your bank account says, I have $5,000, you really don't because that money is already promised and it's promised to your future self.
Oh, I love that. I have multiple bank accounts just for that same exact reason. And that, I find that so helpful of I don't have the money because it has already been accounted for this other thing.
Yes, I love it.
Okay, so switching gears, going into your book that's going to be released in 2026, can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Yes, thank you for asking. So the title of the book is Cash Libre, 10 Pillars to Help You Reclaim Your Purpose and Financial Freedom. And I love the book. You want to start with that?
I
It
love
is.
the title already. Cash
Thank
Libre.
you.
Yes, freedom.
So So cash libre is it's a mindset, but it's also a reclamation to make sure that we are utilizing our economic power to help our community. And I want to say that the book is a cry for look at what we can do together. It is the story of everything that I built since 2019, but it's also the story of many women that want to reclaim that financial prosperity and they don't know where to start. And so the book has 10 chapters, and each chapter is guiding the reader through the multiple phases of what it takes to become a cash libre. And a
Mm,
cash libre is someone that says, I want to become limitless. I want to earn as much money as I can. I want to give money as much as I want. I want to reinvest back in our community. I want to also call out the bullshit system that it has always told us that we cannot build wealth. So I am a mom. I forgot to say that I am a mom of two girls, and I read a lot of children's books, like a lot, probably five every day. And so one of the things that I wanted to create with this book was I want this book to make people not just feel seen or tell them like, here's what I suggest, but I want to make them laugh. And I want them to go back to our roots.
mm,
So I use characters in the book to paint the story of someone maybe who wants to save, maybe someone who is the girl that struggles with FOMO, the one who wants to just always overspend and look amazing, the one who struggles with salary negotiations, the one that has ADHD, the one that is an Afro Latina. And so I created these characters because that's part of who we are too, right?
mhm,
Latinas or Latinos are not just from Mexico, they're from all over. And we also have diversity within our own cultura.
mhm,
And I am an 80s girl, so I bring a lot of my 80s nostalgia with me when I'm writing the book, when the characters are talking to each other. And I cannot wait for people to read it. It is very, very different than anything that I've seen. And the last chapter is something that no one has talked about that our community needs to know, because that is also how we redirect money back to our community. So I'm pretty excited. So I did interviews for the book. There's a lot of research done, and I'm excited for this book. And I've decided to work with a publishing home from Seattle. In fact, today I'm going over a couple things that we want to make sure that they're clear for the agreement.
Mm,
And that is also something that I love as a business owner and as someone who has been able to heal the money trauma, that I can get a contract and review it and send it back and say, hey, thanks for sending this agreement, but here's what I think will work best for us, right? So negotiating the terms and conditions, negotiating even the amount that I'm investing in them, negotiating who I want to design the cover versus just being told, well, here's who we work with. And I wanted to say, hey, hold on, like this is great, but I want to bring my own illustrator for the cover
mm,
because this is important. And so for your listeners, if they're curious, like what else is possible beyond healing their money story and starting investing, is you get to be super comfortable telling people, hey, let's make a mutual understanding that is beneficial for both of us, right?
mm,
Not just saying yes, ma'am, and yes, sir, and continue with the, okay, I'm not someone who is capable of negotiating anything.
mm.
And so I'm excited for the book, and you're gonna love it.
I'm so excited for it. And yeah, I just keep hearing you share these important, I would say, insights of just the power of recognizing our own agency and the power in being very intentional with how we do things. And I think that's maybe a little bit contrary sometimes to what we're told as kids, like listen to your elders, just like do this, like follow the directions, and being like, hold on, I am an individual and I have thoughts and I have insights and those matter. And I could share those with the people that I'm interacting with, like the people that are going to be publishing my book. And I get to have an equal say in this as well, if not a greater say, because it is your book.
Yeah, 100%. And I've also, so this is my second publishing home that I'm working with. The first one, I decided not to hire them because they were trying to censor me on my writing and the way
Mm.
I speak. And inside the book, I also have illustrations from a Latina illustrator that you guys get to learn who she is when the book is out.
Boo.
And I wanted to also make the book about that, right? Like the book is, yes, I am providing the writing, but I wanted to make this book about us, because I 100% believe in the power of community over competition and collaboration, and that you have talents that I don't have, and vice versa. And so I wanted to bring that into the book. And again, that's what Cash Libre is about. Is so Cash Libre is someone who just says, well, what if it works? What if I can become the cycle breaker? What if I can become the one that retires at 40, at 50? What if I can become the one that just makes so much money that it starts redirecting the money to Latina founders? What if I can be the one that has the foundation rather than being the one that volunteers so many hours? What if I can be the one that writes the checks, right?
Mhm.
So throughout the book and throughout the chapters and the reflection, I'm really challenging the reader to say, what if? What if it's you? And I really hope that people take action. And I know they will, because it's not just your typical finance book where people are very tired of, oh my God, another book on budgeting. And in fact, one of the things that I haven't shared with any other podcast that I'll share with you here, Karina, is for the research that I did, I was also very intentional with making sure that the research that I included was only by organizations that are Latino led,
Mm.
Latino founded, because that's another thing that we also do. We tend to believe that somebody else's research is always greater than our own research. So I was very intentional with, yeah, can I add a study from a big university, or can I use maybe a reference to a book that did so well, but is not written by someone that looks like us? And I said,
Mm.
no, this book has to be 100% for us, by us, and if I'm including any research, any data, it has to be from a Latin organization or an ally who really walks the line every time our community is growing, our community is being targeted. I wanted to make
Mhm.
sure that those people were also front center of the book because I said I have a responsibility as an author to include and talk about the disparities that
Mhm.
exist that are holding us from building wealth. And sometimes it's also how we share resources with representation and leadership. We
Mhm.
are the leaders, and
Mhm.
sometimes we don't see that too because every day we see thousands and thousands of ads or posts that said somebody else doesn't look like you. They're the experts, and therefore their data is 100% more important than yours. And I told
Mhm.
myself, no. I made a list of what are the things that I want to include on this book that are beyond sharing the stories and creating the characters. I said, no, this book is for us. And I ended up signing with my publisher because they share values that are 100% tied to what I believe in. And the only reason why I didn't find or I didn't hire a Latina publishing home is because it was really hard to get a hold of the one that I wanted. And so I said, okay, I have to move with the next phase of the book. But I'm happy with my decision because now I'm able to negotiate terms and conditions with them, and we're able to meet in the middle, as you put it, as equals.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that's really standing out to me as you're sharing those parts is how money is not just a resource for ourselves and our lives, but how it can help us elevate voices and our community within that process as well, and how it can have that like greater impact. And I think this is one of the things that I've been hearing of how money really just amplifies who you are. And I think it has to do a little bit with some of my own limiting beliefs that I've been tackling around money and sometimes like the ethical and like the morality behind it, but then just really being able to recognize that money can help elevate community as well.
Yeah, 100%. It's a tool and it's a resource, and there's so much money like to go around. And when you are making money, you're not taking from me because there's endless supply of it. And this is why I also love challenging myself to have goals every month where I say, well, how much money do we want to make today? How much money do I want to make next month? And sometimes I'm not making it that day, but I am planting the seeds for what is coming for me. This week, for example, I had a $2,500 day by something that I planted thirty days ago. And when I
Mm,
saw the results, I was like, wow, if I can just keep planting these seeds of how I can create money, I'm truly going to hit my goal sooner than later. And this is something that I highly recommend also for your audience. Like spend time listening to your thoughts and your limiting beliefs, but also spend time playing because making money truly is about just giving yourself permission to be a child again.
mm,
I created this book because I give myself permission to say, oh, what if I can create these characters and start like writing for them and they're talking and they're doing this.
mm,
And with my illustrator, I came to her and said, I want this character to look like this. And I give her also the opportunity to create. I wasn't like, well, she has to have these eyes, or she has to do this, or she has to wear these. I said, this is who she is. This is what she's struggling with. And can you create her so I can write for her? Once she gave me the illustrations, I had the book concept. Once she gave me the illustrations, I was able to then print it and have it right here. And I would say, okay, now I'm gonna write for you, girl. Like, how are you doing? Right. And so I started like writing
mm.
characters next to me. And that was such a fun process that now I'm ready. I'm like, I can't wait for people to read it.
Yeah, I love that. You're already inspiring me of like, how can I have more fun with things? I'm
Yeah.
definitely going to take that. And I have one more question. I know we're all going to have to wait for your book to drop in 2026, but can you share three practical tips that the listener can take away from today's session and how they can implement that in their day to day?
Yeah, absolutely. What I would recommend is don't look for the easy way out. What I mean is don't get another book on how to budget or how to invest because you already have the knowledge. What I would recommend is that you have to sit down with your money making emotions, and those money making emotions is what holds the answers to how you will become cash libre. Number two is you have to stop thinking about what are people going to think, because there are so many women out there that are still waiting for permission to build something, to negotiate something, to set the boundary. And with the way things are right now, we cannot afford to wait for permission. We have to be the catalyst of change. And while, yes, we want to help everyone outside, we have to start within, right? Then number three is if you have tried to start your money conversation and you know that you try and try and try and the avoidance is huge, you have to ask yourself, what is the cost of my avoidance and what is one thing that I can do today to start changing that? And sometimes it means you joining a newsletter for someone that talks about money every week. And don't be afraid of money. You asked me for three, but I'm going to give them a fourth one, and that is
Okay.
don't be afraid of money, because money only amplifies what's already within, right? The people that are harming our community right now, inside, they're not good people, but you are. And so we have to utilize money to create the change that we want to see. And you cannot, yeah, we cannot afford to wait another 4 years. It has to be now.
Completely agree on the permission. I think I'm still looking into that myself. Well, thank you, Lucy. And is there anything else you want to share with listeners?
I just like to share, if you give me permission, where they can find me. I have a podcast as well, Say Hola Wealth podcast. I have a newsletter, Cash Libre newsletter, and you can find me at sayholawealth.com or Say Hola Wealth on any platform. And thank you so much for having me.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Lucy. Bye,
Thank you.
everyone. And if you like today's episode, please remember to also leave a review and go check out Lucy's resources. Bye. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Rooted in Intention. Until next time, and remember to keep showing up for the life, relationships, and community you want. Now go, grow the life you want from the roots up.